just learn something. So most of you have studied Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, Arjun says, after listening to all the Sankhya philosophy, a lot of knowledge in second chapter. So in the third chapter, he says, O Krishna, what impels one to commit sin, as if unwillingly and forced against one's will? In other words, we want to do good, but we end up doing something which is not good. What is that inside which is sitting inside us makes us do it? And today's topic is part of the answer which Lord Krishna gives. He says, Kamesh Krodhesh Rajogun Samudhva Mahashano Mahapapma Videhanam Ihi Varina. Very. Who is a very? He says, Kam and Krodha. Very means enemy. He says it's a calm born out of Rajogun. That becomes anger. Kamesha, Krodesha, Rajoguna, Samudhava. Okay, there's a deep philosophy in here. That's what we are going to discuss today. So it is calm born out of Rajogun that becomes anger. And he says calm is insatiable and is a great devil enemy. Know this as your enemy. Then he further tells us, where is this enemy sitting? What is the place of this enemy? If I know this is an enemy, and I need to know where is this enemy and how to conquer this enemy. He says, Indriyani manobuddhir asya adhishthanam uchyate. He says the senses, the mind, and the intellect are the seat of this. So all the upadhis which we have, it is seated on those upadhis. We learn from the scriptures that every human being has within himself a fountain of joy, fountain of strength, fountain of bliss. Why? Because we are essentially divine. We are part of that God. But due to wrong ways of thinking and feeling, we acquire various weaknesses which do not allow us to develop our inner potentiality. These weaknesses or impurities in the mind, they obscure our majesty of the self. Just like a cloud obscure the brilliance of the sky, the same way the brilliance which is inside us, part of God, who we are, is covered by these impurities, these enemies. We all know that there are 6 dangerous enemies, even though Lord Krishna mentioned only 2 over here. Other places he mentions others also. And I brought these 2 verses over here today because we are going to talk only on one of them, calm. And if you're interested, we can talk about the second enemy next week, Krodha. Okay, so but there are 6 of them. Together they are called Shat Ripu. Ripu is the enemy, Shat means 6. They are also referred as vikars. Kam is the first one. Desire for sense pleasures in general. That's what kam is. And passion in particular. Krodha, anger. Lobha, greed. Moha, delusion or infatuation. Madh, pride. arrogance, and Matsarya, jealousy. Matsarya is also referred as Irsha or Asuya. There's a slight variation in the meaning of Irsha. If you're interested, we can talk about that also. All six we can talk about if there's interest for it. But today's topic is only calm. These six are interrelated. Let me repeat it again. Calm is a desire for sensual pleasure. Krodha, anger. Lobha, greed. Moha, delusion or infatuation. Madh, pride or arrogance. It's also called ahankar. Madh, there's another name for it. And Matsarya, jealousy. Okay, so these are the six. So, as I was saying earlier, these are six interrelated impurities or vices. They all include the negative qualities that plague the human personality. So we are divine in essence, but because of these vices, these impurities, our actions are not, our thoughts are not pure. So that's why they are called ripus. These are enemies from everybody's childhood, or enemies from many incarnations also. These enemies, they travel with us because they are part of our subtle body. That's why they travel with us. And that's why we need to work on it now as a human being. Because as long as these enemies are not conquered, a person cannot enjoy real prosperity or peace in life. And forget about attaining enlightenment. It becomes a challenge. But it can be also a delight if we are a true aspirant and if we find these debilitating weaknesses and endeavor to remove them in order to awaken our real personality. So, with the persistent introspection and sincere self effort, every person can become the embodiment of divine bliss and perfection that he or she is intended to be. So, in other words, work we have to do, but we can do the work only when we have the knowledge. So, let's talk about calm today. The Sanskrit word calm has a number of different meanings. In one context, calm is the name given in the Vedas to one of the four Purusharthas. That means the goals of life or the values that every individual must attend to in life. So if you are saying that calm is an enemy, then why did they say calm is a goal of life? So that's why we have to understand it properly. And what are those four other three goals? Dharma, Artha, and Moksha. Altogether four, we say Dharma, Artha, Kam, and Moksha. Dharma is the ethical values, Artha is the material values, and Moksha is the spiritual value. So in relation to these goals of life or Purusharthas, calm refers to the desire to establish joyous relationships with the family members, friends, and other people around you in society. That's a calm. We are social beings. We like to have these connections. So that's why in an ideal plan of life, one should establish a meaningful social relationships, calm, a secure material wealth, earth, while being overrooted in dharma established in the values of life, and ultimately moving towards moksha, liberation.
Going to gas station.
Everything okay?
Yeah, car was.
Okay. So this is an ideal plan of life that rishis gave us. So the desires involved in calm and earth have a healthy and important role to play. But it becomes disbalanced. It becomes aberrant in the society when the ideal plan of calm and earth is ignored. When this calm and earth becomes the end in itself. We are doing everything just for the desires. Instead of having the desires to have a peace around us. So, disbalance in calm and earth is the problem. So then they should be regulated by dharma as they should be. That's why the rishis, they put dharma in front of calm or even in front of earth. Dharma first, then earth, then calm, then moksha. This is the diagram they gave us. So when calm and earth, they are unregulated, eventually they produce negativity, negative impression in our unconscious mind. And what happens? We have increasingly stress, increased grief, and lots of frustration. Because desires, they keep on growing. And further insight into calm or desires come from a study of three gunas, the qualities. Three gunas, the modes of the mind. Sattva, rajas, and tamas. A mind that is tamasic is characterized by delusion, dullness, and negativity. When desires mix with the tamas, the result is bad. It is the crudest desire possible, like a desire for revenge, desire to harm others for your own benefit. That's a tamasic desire. Then when the mind is rajasic, it becomes externalized, distracted, restless, gives rise to desires for more wealth, no satisfaction, no matter how much you have, fame, power, many vanities of life comes from Rajsikta. So that's why, what did Lord Krishna say? Rajaguna samudhva, Rajsik mind. But on the other hand, Sattvic mind is filled with harmony, goodness, and purity. That is a Sattvic mind. And the desires which arise when the mind is pervaded by Sattva are desires for good association, for reading scriptures, for having simplicity in life. That way, a person can devote more mental energy to the spiritual pursuit. So Lord Krishna is not saying that sattvic desire is enemy. So while desires we should have, but we should convert them into the sattvikta. Sattvic desire is not harmful. Rather, it is essential for our spiritual progress. We won't progress if we don't have a sattvic desire. We'll become lazy. So therefore, when we are studying the impurities of the mind and how to remove them, the calm that we are targeting is desire that is opposed to dharma, the basic ethical value of life. Desire in general, which is unduly rajasic and tamasic, opposed to the spiritual movement, and that is a calm which is referred to as a ripu, enemy. Okay, just I hope you're clear on this. There's a lot of people say, oh, having a moksha or serving, helping, that's also a desire. That is not a enemy. That desire is a good desire. That's a sattvic desire that will help us to evolve. Getting up in the morning, doing yoga, meditation, that desire we must cultivate. Okay, make sure that you go back to that Bhagavad Gita, what Lord Krishna called the Ripu, the enemy. Most human desires are expressions of ignorance and imperfections. That's why ordinarily we say the desires are, they give us pain, they give us frustration, they give us failure. A desire mind which is infested by desires, the Rajasic and the Tamasic desires cannot rest in peace. Desires are, so right now when I'm saying desire, that means calm. The Rajasic and Tamasic desires are much like a net in which human consciousness is trapped. If the human soul is a bird, wishes to fly into the region of freedom, but caught in the net of desires, it suffers untold miseries. So that's why all miseries and afflictions proceed from desires. If you're feeling miserable, frustrated, look at it. What kind of a desires you have? Sattvic desires, you'll never feel frustrated. You'll feel elevated. Art of studying, purifying, and sublimating our desires. If a person learns this, then a person will have a peace, prosperity, self-realization, immortality. That's how important this is. This topic, that's why Lord Krishna said, the very first, calm. Many times he has mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, every unfulfilled and frustrated desire brings to the unconscious an impression of tension. Your desire is unfulfilled and you feel tense. When these impressions of tension and portion of willpower is locked up, and then a person wants to desire more. More a person desires, the less he is able to execute through the actions. Because you get so confused which desires to fulfill. And the more one desires, the less he is able to enjoy inner peace and tranquility. So real nature is peace. Real nature is tranquility. But it's all covered with these tamasic and rajasic desires. Desires manifest in two forms, unconscious and conscious. Unconscious desires are known as vasanas, or subtle desires. And majority of the people don't even know their own subtle inclinations. And while they consciously endeavor to build the pillars of peace and tranquility, they unconsciously create obstacles through the perpetration of anger, hatred, egoism, attachment to the worldly values, etc. You see somebody else happier than you, calmer than you just have a jealousy, anger towards them. So between these two conflicts of the conscious and the unconscious, a human being is unable to work effectively toward the acceleration of their own evolution. So we came here to evolve, but we are just struggling with it because we don't have a clear idea what vasanas we brought in with us and what vasanas we are unconsciously adding into. So the desire for worldly pleasures will not terminate if you indiscriminately indulge in them day and night. Okay, indiscriminately means without thinking it through. That's why the more you run after worldly pleasures, the more one's desires increase. Just like a fire burns only more fiercely when fuel is poured into it. And fulfilling the desires unconsciously is like that, pouring the fuel into the fire. So a desire bursts into insurmountable proportion when you pour worldly impressions into your mind by thoughtlessly pursuing the desire. Thoughtlessly. That is unconsciously. That's why Lord Krishna describes the situation in the second chapter. Very powerful way he tells us. Dhyayato vishyan punsaha sanghas teshu upajayate. Sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho abhijayate. Krodhat bhavati samoha samohat samriti vibhrama. Samriti bhranshat buddhi nasho buddhi nashat parnashyate. These are the verses 62 and 63 in chapter 3. He says, by constantly thinking of an object, one becomes attached to that object. One becomes attached to the object. From attachment arises the desire. When the desire to possess the object is obstructed, one develops anger. Anger causes loss of reason. Loss of reason leads to loss of memory. To the loss of memory causes one's destruction. So very powerful verse. It starts from thinking of the object. Then mind becomes attached to the object. From the attachment, desire comes. And when there's obstruction in possessing that, one develops anger. Anger causes loss of reason. As a human being, we are supposed to reason it out. We lose that capacity. Loss of reason leads to loss of memory. And loss of memory causes the destruction.
Harshji, what is this loss of memory over here? Please explain.
Loss of memory means you even forget who you are at that time. In anger, sometimes people say something which they regret later on. What to say, what not to say, that kind of a memory. Okay? So it's like a discrimination is gone. Buddhi. Okay? Samriti bharanshat buddhi nasho. Buddhi nashat parnashyate. So each time your mind becomes calm and you feel happy. Because sometimes it feels like, yeah, I fulfill my desire. I am happy. I am calm. You wanted to buy something, and the minute you buy it, sure, there's a happiness. But this is the joy of the self. Because mind is not thinking about something else now. Mind became stable momentarily until some other desire erupts. So the joy is not coming from the object. Joy you are feeling because there's no other desire at that fraction of a moment. Reflect upon this. Reflecting in the lake of your mind is a wise thing to do. Enjoy your happy experiences, but always remind yourself that the joy came from within you, from your own heart, within your innermost self, because joy is always there and only there. So if you must pursue objects, do it knowingly, understand profoundly that happiness is not coming from them. Objects do not have the happiness. Objects are inert. Happiness is coming from us. So if you are wise, you recognize that happiness does not come from objects. Objects are perishable and impermanent. And these are the facts we need to know. That's how you begin to control your desires. Okay? It's not that you should suppress the desires. You need to know where the desires are coming from, what the desires are doing for me, what kind of a desires I need. And always remember, happiness is coming from within me. Source of happiness is right here. I am the source, not the things, not the places, not the people. Happiness is my own. So then what happens to, if you recognize this, what really happens? Because there is a energy which you are using to run outwardly to fulfill desires. And the lower the desires, more energy needed. Tamasic desires need more energy to fulfill. Rajasic desires even more. So now, if you understand it now, this whole dynamics, what really happens to the energy which is already inside you? What do you do with that? Let me tell you. Very easily, very effortlessly, this energy turns into divine love. Divine love which we are all looking for. We want to love God. We want to serve God. We want to become one with God. So instead of desirable objects, you desire mental peace, liberation. That's what happens. So that's why calm, when controlled and sublimated, this is called sublimation of calm. When it's sublimated, it becomes divine love. It becomes mumukshutvam, aspiration for attaining self-realization. Because you are constantly putting an effort to direct and control calm, and you are redirecting it in a proper way. I'm sure you have heard about the story of the 99, many different versions of it. And the bottom line of the story of 99 is the moment you get caught by the illusion of needing more of something. So 99 means you want to make it 100. Whether it's 100 million or whether it's $100. You just want to have more. You want more to be happy. You become entangled in the joyless pursuit. That is the story of 99. So do not be entangled by 99s. Okay? Desires for the things which are perishable are full of vanity. So that's why desire self-realization alone. Desire the development of spiritual values and virtues. Desire the betterment of humanity. Desire to become desireless. Renounce worldly desires by serving humanity and developing devotion and practicing profound inquiry. Reflect what's happening inside me. These are my desires. What color will I give it to them? Are they dark and tamasic? Or are they red and rajasic? Or are they white and pure? My desires. Perform actions with a sense of dedication to God. Because when your heart is purified, it will automatically become filled with the sublime desires. The desires that are expression of divine will for the good of the humanity. Those kind of desires don't bind. They are not the net which binds you. Those are the desires which bring freedom to you, liberation to you. So I just want you to be very clear about this. But my talk on the calm won't be complete if I don't talk about the passionate desire, which is called lust. Because that is another definition of calm, lust. Every religion speaks of the importance of overcoming lustful passions. Yogic scriptures, however, have given a profound insight into this process by detailing the mystic practice of Brahmacharya. Rishi Patanjali, right away in the first step on that ladder of yoga, of Ashtanga Yoga, he talked about Brahmacharya. So Brahmacharya is very much related to calm. So let's see what the yogic scriptures talk about. What is Brahmacharya? Because we need to practice it. So what is Brahmacharya? Brahmacharya literally means living and moving in Brahma. Charya. Charya means roaming, moving, living. So living and moving in Brahm. Brahm is the absolute, the divine self, truth. That is Brahm. I'm not talking about Brahma. I'm talking about Brahma. And its highest form, Brahmacharya, implies being established in the awareness, I am Brahma, Aham Brahmasmi. However, from a relative point of view, see, this is the absolute point. But we live in this relative world. So in the relative point of view, Brahmacharya consists of restraining and sublimating the sexual urge or the urge of other senses also. But predominantly people think that it is a sexual urge. Okay? But it's in the eyes also, in the nose also, in the hands also, it's all the senses we are supposed to control. That's Brahmacharya. Generally, people think of a Brahmachari as a young person or a monk who is celibate and unmarried. That's called a Brahmachari. Right? In ancient India, the sages, they divided the human lifetime into 4 25-year stages, which they call ashrams. The first 25 years, the schooling part is called Brahmacharya ashram. Okay? Because you are supposed to learn more at that time, control your energies, especially the sexual energy, because that's where people just lose themselves. In the deeper philosophical sense, Brahmacharya implies control and sublimation of biological passion, leading to the recovery of a deeper perception of life and love. This deeper, infinitely inspiring and elevating love unites not just the sexes, but a man with the universe and with all that exists. This is the ideal of Brahmacharya. That a human being, whether it's a male or a female, is intrinsically the self, the Brahm. And his or her instinct to love will ultimately be completely fulfilled only when he reaches the state of self-realization. Union with the self in all is attained. It's like a oneness. We are all one. That's why we all have this inherent urge to create, to commune with all that exists. This very familiar instinct, biological urge to reproduce and to become involved in passionate relationships is merely a shadow of the intuitional demand of our soul to commune with all that exists. So we want to become one with all, but we just narrow ourselves and we just lose ourselves, lose the bigger picture and drawn into something so small. This urge deep within for inner creativity, expansion of the soul, can be fulfilled without entering into the relationships. That's why the certain personalities, they don't enter into the relationships, they become monks. Highly spiritually evolved personalities, highly intuitive, intelligent people, that's what they do. And we have seen that over the ages. Without having produced children, you can feel the fulfillment of seeing all children as your own children. You can feel your own self in all. Without ever getting into any relationship of a selfish physical nature. But it definitely requires a super normal mind. Average mind just likes to follow. People are doing it, I want to do it too. People are having and hoarding and obscuring, I'm going to do that too. So in order to live this kind of a life, it requires a super normal mind, a saintly mind, for one to have this experience of spiritual unity. This is what our scriptures talk about. Until one is evolved, because majority of us are not evolved. We need to experience true cosmic consciousness and divine love. What do we need? We need to have a proper interpersonal relationships and family involvements to help awaken the desire for such lofty forms of love. That's why there's a love, motherly love, parental love, love between the friends, love between teacher and the student. So love, pure love. Okay, not a lusty love I'm talking about. A human being must be creatively fulfilled. If one does not experience a deeper form of creativity on the mental and spiritual level, then nature forces him to fulfill the creative urge on the physical and instinctive levels. That's why we got to be careful. Because when we are doing it unconsciously, then we are creating more vasanas. We are creating more problem for us to solve it in the future. When you advance spiritually, you begin to enjoy intuitive expansion and discover a different kind of a creation, a creativity of consciousness. And when this kind of a creativity arises, the need for biological creativity is overcome. And that's what in yoga, it's called, in a yogic terminology, sex sublimation. Brahmacharya. And when the mental energy that pours down in the senses is controlled, because senses are also involved in it. It's not just only a sexual part, it's all the senses. When mental energy that pours down into the senses is controlled by intuitive understanding, what happens? Your thoughts are clear. Your mind is sensitive to the deeper harmony inherent in the entire world. You enjoy more profound joy of life. And what happens with that? Yogis, they say, this sublimated sexual energy becomes a ojas shakti. I'm sure you have heard that ojas, O-J-A-S, ojas shakti. Shakti means the energy. See, the energy which you are dissipating through the passionate desires, you control it, not suppress it, control it with the knowledge, and it becomes a ojas energy, which produces an extraordinary vitality in a human body and mind. That kind of a mind vibrates with spiritual strength, radiates an effulgence, which gives a glow and luster to the entire personality. And this is the magnetism we see in the saints and the rishis, in the avatars. We are also part of that God, but how come we don't have that radiance? So this magnetic effulgence has a powerful effect on others and helps them to perceive their own potential strength in a most inspiring and divine way. It's like a magnetic. Don't we say that certain people, they have a magnetic effect on us? We just want to be in their company. This is what Ojas says. This is a energy inside us. And we all have that, but we dissipate it. We just let it go. So the mind which overcome by passion is a tense and clouded mind. See, on one hand, there's a clouded mind, which majority of the people have these days, frustrated mind, tense mind. And this kind of a mind helplessly depends on the objects of pleasure, and it's devoid of any real creativity. It's a very ordinary mind, looking for the fulfillment from these others. It's like a owner of the biggest jewel, part of God, but looking, being a greedy and unsatisfied person, deprived. So the higher form of joy overcomes the mind's inclination towards lesser pleasures. And that is what is referred to as the sex sublimation or Brahmacharya. Majority of us are sitting here, we are householders. Sure, we are drawn to a partner by instinctive and karmic factors. There are karmas involved there too. But gradually, you must come to realize that the purpose of love and married life is not merely the driving of a comfort and pleasure. Rather, partners in a healthy and meaningful love relationships must learn to minimize the selfish demands for pleasures. Become endowed with increasing endurance. patience, self-sacrifice, and understanding. So if we cultivate these qualities while living in a relationship, you can still practice all these values which we are talking about. If a couple can do that, or if a person can do that, that person is promoting his or her spiritual evolution. And if two people are doing it together, working, walking on this path, they are mutual spiritual evolution they will see. And their union will be glorified. That kind of a couple, if they're young, they are married, the great souls are looking for a home like that to come for their growth. That's why our rishis, yogis, they were all married. That doesn't mean they were not brahmachari. So this sublimation of this energy we need to learn about. So a couple may stay together without any outward infidelity. Yet, if they don't perceive the higher love hasn't dawned on them, they will always be insecure. Even because of the lack of infidelity, still they can feel insecure in their relationship. Because their love or their relationship is simply a matter of attachment and entanglement. That is not a yogic relationship. Every love relationship should become a means of elevation. I'm not talking about a man and a woman. I'm not talking a man to man. Every relationship should become a means of elevation, upliftment, and inspiration. That's what love is all about. Your love for another passes the divine test if the one you love is led to elevation through your love. So, in other words, if the person you say you love is becoming a better person, more evolved, you're helping that person. That is a love. Just like I read sometimes, Lord Buddha, when he was a Gautam, he had a search, deep search for himself. His wife said that go out. She is the one who sent him out. That is love. So every love relationship should become a means of elevation, upliftment, and inspiration. But if your love in any way degrades you, the person to whom your love is directed, there is a lack of true brahmacharya, a lack of true fidelity. Real love will not be confined to family, not to a few friends. Ultimately, it becomes universal, cosmic, without a shadow of a sentimentality. Normally, we think that no, we love and we should cry for that person. Without a shadow of sentimentality of a lower nature. That's a lower nature, attachment. Without a shadow of enslavement to a biological instinct or passion. This is a dynamic love. This kind of a love existed in the hearts of all the sages, all the saints. And this kind of a love continues to shine as a source of light and power for all of us. Okay, so our desires, kamanaye, as long as we have mind, we'll have them. Change the color of it. Okay, whether it's a you want to help the community, help your family, keep on expanding. Keep on expanding. So sattvic desires and a sattvic love. Okay. So I know I have gone 5 minutes over. So any questions?
Asmita has written a question. What does ojas mean?
Ojas, as I said earlier, it is our inner energy. It's a radiance which comes from inside. We all have that. It's a spiritual energy. Okay, when it shines, that's called a ojas. See, there's a word tejas. Tejas is a little lower than the ojas. Ojas is a higher level of energy which we all possess, but it has been covered. Okay? All right. So tejas, ojas. Okay? So I say spiritual energies of different levels. Anybody else? Okay, today Rita sings bhajan. So if she's here or she's
Yes, sir. Namaste. I'm
yes,
here.
Rita.
Archie?
Yes.